The clock struck exactly 11:43 a.m. London was waking up to a grey typical autumn morning. But behind the sealed high-security doors of Kensington Palace, a silent political storm had already begun to rage. A storm so violent it threatened to tear the very fabric of the British Constitution apart. This was not the usual hushed diplomacy of the royal household. There were no polite exchanges over Earl Grey tea, no gentle laughter from the Wales children echoing through the corridors. Instead, there was a heavy, suffocating silence. A silence that veteran royal aides, men and women who have served the crown for decades, privately described in whispered tones as the gravest constitutional fracture since the abdication crisis of 1936. At the center of this historic rupture stood two men representing two unstoppable forces. On one side, Prince William, the future king, born to rule and carrying the heavy weight of a 1,000-year-old dynasty on his shoulders. On the other, Keir, the man currently running the country, or at least trying to. And at that precise moment, the Prince of Wales did something no heir to the throne has dared to do in modern history. He didn't offer a diplomatic maybe. He didn't suggest a review through official channels. He didn't hide behind ambiguous royal protocol. He delivered a cold, absolute, and terrifyingly definitive refusal. It was a moment that froze the blood of the palace staff. Witnesses say the air in the room grew instantly colder. The confrontation had actually been sparked 4 days earlier via a document marked urgent and confidential sent from the Prime Minister's office. It wasn't a request, it was a demand. Starmer, emboldened by his government's aggressive new agenda, had pushed too far. He had crossed the invisible line that separates the temporary power of Parliament from the eternal authority of the Crown. He believed he could force the monarchy to bend to his political will. He believed the palace was too weak to resist. He was wrong. Inside his private study, William stood resolute, staring out at the grounds, his expression unreadable, but his intent ironclad. He wasn't just a prince in that moment. He was the firewall protecting the institution from total collapse. He knew that to say yes now would be to sign the death warrant of the monarchy's independence. So he chose war. He chose to break protocol to save the kingdom. As the letter containing his refusal was sealed with the royal crest and handed to his private secretary, the atmosphere shifted from anxiety to dread. Everyone in the room knew that once this message left the palace gates, there was no turning back. The fuse had been lit. The royal refusal was on its way to Downing Street, and Britain was about to plunge into chaos. To truly understand why William drew such a hard line in the sand, we have to look at the document that landed on his desk 4 days prior, a document that insiders say chilled even the most veteran political advisors. Starmer wasn't just asking for a photo op or a vague statement of support. His demand was specific, brutal, and unprecedented in the history of the relationship between Number 10 and the palace. The Prime Minister was demanding immediate public royal endorsement for his controversial new housing reform bill, but the devil was in the details. This bill contained a clause that would allow the government to forcibly seize underused parcels of Crown estate land for compulsory development. It was in effect a government land grab disguised as social reform. The language used in Starmer's communication was blunt, almost combative. According to leaks from multiple sources who viewed the draft, the Prime Minister didn't mince words. He wrote that the monarchy must demonstrate its commitment to modern Britain or risk facing renewed and difficult questions concerning its ongoing relevance to the public. To the palace, this wasn't a policy proposal. It was a threat. It was a warning shot fired directly at the institution's survival. Starmer was effectively holding the crown hostage. Give us your land and your endorsement or we will turn the public against you. For a sitting prime minister to write that to a future king is shocking. For a future king to accept it would be suicide. William didn't hesitate. His refusal was absolute. And when that refusal hit Downing Street shortly after lunch, the reaction was nothing short of explosive. Witnesses inside Number 10 described the scene as terrifying. At 2:17 p.m. The Prime Minister was reportedly pacing his office, red-faced, fists clenched, his voice rising until it sounded like he was shouting into a storm. The usually composed Keir Starmer had reached a combustion point. One senior minister claims he heard Starmer slam his hand against his desk, rattling the glass and shouting the line that has now been whispered across every corridor of power in London. He thinks he can say no to the elected government of this nation. Starmer allegedly roared, his voice echoing down the hallway. Parliament makes kings, not the other way around. Inside number 10, the temperature dropped to freezing. Staff stopped typing. Junior aides exchanged looks of genuine panic, realizing they had never seen the Prime Minister like this before. For the first time since the election, the words constitutional crisis weren't just a headline. They were a reality happening in the next room. Starmer felt humiliated. He had tried to bully the palace and the palace had pushed back. But in his fury, he was about to make a mistake that would escalate a private dispute into a national catastrophe. Within 3 hours of the meltdown inside number 10, someone inside the building took a step that transformed a sensitive private dispute into a full-blown national crisis. A decision was made, likely by a senior strategist hoping to salvage the Prime Minister's bruised ego, to leak the story to the press. The outlet chosen was The Guardian, a publication historically critical of the monarchy. The calculation was cold and cynical. If they painted Prince William as an autofouche aristocrat hoarding land while the nation faced a housing crisis, public opinion would force the palace to surrender. They expected the people to rise up against the prince. They expected the headlines to read William blocks homes for the poor. But in the high-stakes game of royal poker, the government made a fatal miscalculation. They forgot who they were dealing with. Instead of triggering a wave of Republican sentiment, the leak triggered the exact opposite. As the news broke, public anger erupted, but not at the royals. It erupted at Keir Starmer. The Prime Minister had accidentally stepped into the most dangerous political trap in British life, attempting to drag the monarchy into the dirty machinery of government policy. Britain, it turns out, reacts very badly to politicians who try to bully the crown. The narrative spun out of control immediately. Social media didn't see a stubborn prince. They saw a courageous heir defending the Constitution against a power-hungry administration.